Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin, and today I'm riding solo, which is okay. But y'all, man, this has been a crazy year so far. Right now, at the time of this recording, is 2025. And yesterday, I got a chance to participate in a very moving, peaceful protest. Of course, it was the No Kings protest, which is people just protesting that there's no kings in our country. And if you have been living under a rock, you know that this year has been historic for the United States of America, to where there are certain things going on to where we feel like democracy is being threatened. And if you're a fan of the show, you know that we have plenty of guests, plenty of friends who are of all kind of communities, LGBTQ plus, the Black community, white community, and also the Latino, Hispanic community. And today we're talking about that today with an actual immigration lawyer. And you know, we've had lawyers in the past, but right now this year has definitely been busy for them, and I can only imagine what they've been going through. And I have to give them kudos because I know a lot of immigration lawyers don't probably get the kudos, but we have to give them because they've been in the trenches, definitely helping people who have been undocumented, who have been documented, and have been going through these issues with ICE right now. And so today's guest, she is someone I just met, but I've seen her from afar, and I've loved her work. I know my Spanish isn't great, but I love how she's very proactive to the community to give back, try to give free legal advice and just some advice as much as she can about the whole process when it comes to immigration. And without further ado, help me welcome immigration attorney Carla Casas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today and to be able to talk immigration.
And did I get that right? Casas? Is there a say Casas?
That is correct. Casas. So it means houses in Spanish. So casas. Yes.
Casas. See, my Spanish isn't that great. You know, it's not that great, but I tried, you know, and
you did good. You did good.
I was dealing with this because, like, you know, when you're not speaking Spanish on a daily basis, you kind of lose it, right? And so there's a type of pork that we get at Tacos Al Gordo. It's called obligada. And then, but you know, you're obligada as a lawyer. So it's like, I get tongue twisted with either or. So I was telling my friend about that. I was like, man, I always get tongue twisted with like, Odobala. I see it there. I go. See, I always get mixed up with it.
It would be abogada. Abogada. Yeah, I could see how you would get tongue twisted.
Yeah. So, and then so abogada is for the lawyer, right? Just making sure.
That's correct. Yeah, female lawyer, abogada.
Okay. All right. So we got abogada Casas today, and she has been blessed to join us. Like we've been missing each other, but we finally here now. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the Straight Up Show podcast.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to be here and talk about something I'm passionate about.
Yeah. And as I stated, you know, you're in Chicago, right? And before we get started, how just basically tell the people who don't know you, who you are and where you're from.
Sure. So my name is Carla Casas. I'm actually an immigrant myself. I was born in Peru, and my family immigrated when I was 4 years old. We moved to Florida. So I grew up in Florida. I went to law school down there, and then I ended up in Chicago back in 2003. I was hired by a large firm, and they were based out of Chicago. So that's what kind of led me to Chicago. And then since then, I've done many other things as an attorney, but my immigration law practice, I started it 10 years ago. So I own my practice. It's called Casas Immigration. We focus specifically on family-based immigration. I also do deportation defense. And we also work with a lot of victims of crime because there is a special visa for immigrants who have been a victim of a crime here in the U.S. If they report it to the police, they cooperate. It's called the U visa, like the letter U. And then also there's another visa called VAWA, it's VAWA, and it's actually under the Violence Against Women Act, which is a federal statute. But it's basically for spouses of U.S. citizens who are abused by the U.S. citizen spouse, and the spouse is never going to actually help them get a green card because they use that to control them. So under VAWA, that person can move forward on their own without the spouse sponsoring them, and they can apply for a green card like solo, basically. So we do a lot of those cases as well. That's kind of the main focus. And I do have, my main office is here in Chicago. I opened this office 10 years ago, but I actually became a snowbird a few years ago. And so I do spend winters in Florida now because, again, my family is all in Florida. I grew up there. And so I opened an office in Orlando, Florida last year, and I spend winters down there. I usually drive down with my two dogs. I drive in December down to Florida, and then we're there till about May, and then I just got back to Chicago a few weeks ago. So I spend, like end of May through December in Chicago.
Yeah, and trust me, like you being a snowbird is definitely a smart move because, like, I've never been to Chicago, but I definitely know.
Mhm.
Well, I've been to Chicago once, but like when I was there, it was kind of. They said it wasn't that cold, right? So I haven't been to
Yeah.
Chicago when it was like cold, cold. But from
Yeah.
what the tad bit I had was being in Chicago, like I
Yeah.
couldn't stand that cold. So I definitely understand why you're a
Yeah.
snowbird.
No, it's intense. And I spent, about 20 winters here because I did move here in 2003 and I've been here, living here a long time. But I don't know. It's like you get used to it, but you don't ever love it. So the winter is very intense. And again, because actually during COVID, that's one positive thing I guess I could say is, people became much more comfortable with doing virtual consultations and, instead of in person. So I was able to see my clients no matter where I am. And now at this point, the majority of the consultations I do are virtual. Even court is virtual, so I'm able to, it doesn't matter really where I am. So I decided, okay, well, if I can be anywhere, I'll be in Florida in January and February. So that's kind of worked out so far.
Thank you so much for that. And I wish I could be like that too, because right now in Vegas, it's hot.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
like I said, and before we get started, just I know we're coming off of yesterday,
Hmm.
which I guess the community and globally, really, it was estimated that around 12 million people
Hmm.
protested in this No King's Day, which is kind of like what's going on right now in ICE. But this tad bit, just real quickly,
Hmm.
your first response to just seeing that and the amount of people who protested on No King's Day yesterday.
I mean, it's in light of everything that's been going on that's been so depressing. Seeing this was so invigorating. Like seeing people come out and, their constitutional right to like express themselves and make clear what they want and what they don't want. It just felt really great. I mean, honestly, because it's been a rough few months. Since the beginning of the Trump administration, things have moved so quickly. Policies are changing so rapidly, and it's been depressing. I have a lot of clients that have been detained, and everything looks so bleak. So it was just so wonderful. Yesterday. I didn't actually make it out because I was feeling under the weather, and it's been a super stressful week. So I was in my bed watching everybody. I have a lot of friends that went, and people are sending videos, and it was very invigorating. And for me, it sort of helps me feel refreshed. Like, okay, I can do this. I can continue doing this. And there's a lot of support out there, for what we're doing.
And I had to take this time, Miss Carla, because like I've seen you and my other friends who are immigration lawyers. I've seen how much hard work y'all been going through. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you on behalf of everyone across the world, especially in this country, on behalf of people who need immigration lawyers. I just want to say thank you for doing your part. I know you probably don't get the kudos or the appreciation that y'all deserve, but I've seen you on lives. I've seen you on TikTok. I've seen you on Instagram, and you really have been putting the work in, you and your team. So I just want to say thank you so much for the work y'all have been doing.
I appreciate that. I think right now, especially, it feels really nice to hear that, because yeah. And I worry about my team as well, because my receptionists, for example, and my admin assistants, they're on the front lines. They're
Mm.
answering calls from people who are panicked, who've had their relative taken by ICE. They don't know where they are. So I know that it wears on them too. And so I'm actually trying to think of ways that maybe we all go get massages or something where I can keep my team also like in good shape because it wears on all of us, not just the attorneys, but the entire team.
You said that you are an immigrant yourself, and
Mhm.
um, can you go in detail about like that leaving Peru, coming to America, and how was that all going? And also leading up to that, coming to America, becoming a citizen, and like what made you want to get into immigration law as well?
Yeah, so I mean, I was four, as I mentioned, so I was very young. I'm the oldest of three kids, and so for me, it was a huge reality check coming to the U.S. because in Peru, my dad was a pilot for the Air Force, and he also flew for, commercial planes. And so we did financially, we were doing fine. We were doing pretty well. I would say we had a pretty comfortable life, but my youngest brother is severely autistic. And so in Peru, this was 1980. They had no idea at that time. Nobody really understood what autism was, and especially down there, they didn't have the same level. I mean, as soon as we arrived to Miami Children's Hospital, they were quickly able to help my brother and at least tell us what was wrong, give us a diagnosis. So that was probably the main reason we moved here. But then once we were here, we entered on tourist visas like a lot of people do, right? I mean, I was a child, so it wasn't my choice. I was brought here. But, from the earliest memories, I mean, I remember very clearly being on the plane, and I remember being upset because I couldn't sit next to my mom because it was me and my two siblings. There was only two seats, and my mom and my little sister sat next to her, and she was holding my baby brother. And I just remember being upset because I had to sit somewhere else with a stranger, But I remember that so clearly, like landing in Fort Lauderdale, or I guess it was Miami. We landed in Miami. We ended up living in Fort Lauderdale our first few years. But I had a huge weight of responsibility that was dropped on me immediately because we were in a country that my parents did not know. They did not speak the language. The money ran out pretty quickly. I mean, they brought, a good amount of savings and it was gone very, very quick with a family of five. And after that, I became my brother's primary caretaker from the time I was very, very young. I was babysitting my siblings literally from the time we arrived, and I was 4. So it was terrifying. My parents would leave, for a few hours at a time. I mean, they thought that was the best thing. They were afraid of leaving us with anyone else. But it really created this. So our immigrant experience impacted so much like the way that I grew up, the things that I had to deal with. And even just in general, I remember as a kid, I remember going with my parents to see immigration attorneys, like when we had just arrived. And I was, I learned English pretty quickly, like most kids do. And my parents still didn't speak. So I would, help to translate like the story of a lot of immigrant children. And I remember we went to this, now looking back, I don't know if this person probably wasn't even really a lawyer, but it was an immigration quote unquote attorney who was going to help us with, our paperwork. And they ended up stealing several $1,000s and then disappeared, like their office was gone. So I don't think that they were actually an attorney. And then we found another attorney who was able to help us, kind of like the good guy. I remember driving all the way to Atlanta from Fort Lauderdale. This was again shortly after arriving, and I remember that it was really cold in Atlanta, and it was like snow, like light snow, and we had to go my mom had to go buy a coat because we didn't have coats in Florida. You don't really need coats in South Florida. But all of that stuck with me, and that was my first exposure to an attorney, a good one and a bad one, and just growing up. I mean, for sure, I grew up as an immigrant myself, just seeing my parents always never fully understanding what their rights were. There's always this fear of we're here, but we're not really, the Americans. And, even when they become citizens, a lot of people still don't feel, especially if they may not speak English perfectly. And, so all of those things I think led me to the idea of wanting to be an attorney. But I will say that I didn't immediately. I mean, I graduated law school in 2002 in Florida. I went to University of Florida. I got a job with a big law firm, and no one turned, not no one, but I wasn't going to turn that down. It was a good opportunity, even though that's not what motivated me to go to law school. But I accepted the opportunity. I appreciated it. I mean, it was what most people in law school, they want that type of job because that's where you're making good money right off the bat. I met a lot of, good mentors, attorneys. I worked at 2 big law firms for 4 years. So that's how I ended up in Chicago. But I'll be honest, I always felt okay, this is not why I went to law school though. My passion, that burning, wanting to go to law school because I wanted to be an advocate for people like my parents. That's what pushed me to want to do that. And I didn't know exactly if it was going to be immigration law or what area of law, but I wanted to advocate for the little guy, for the people who need it the most. And so, so working at those 2 firms, I knew that, I got the most out of it that I could, but I knew that wasn't going to be the end for me. After that, I also worked for the federal government, which was a great experience. I was a federal trial attorney with the U.S. Department of Labor, got some amazing federal court experience, trial experience in general. But after almost 5 years of doing that, I really did feel burnt out. Trial work is very difficult, and I was traveling everywhere because since you work for the federal government, we're covering regions of the country. But actually, during that experience, I remember one case in particular where we were prosecuting a restaurant because they were not paying anybody minimum wage or paying them flat rates, basically, not hourly. And all of the employees were undocumented immigrants for the most part. And I remember I developed a close relationship with them because we needed them to be our witnesses. First of all, we're going to prosecute the case. They're the witnesses. And typically they're scared. Like they don't want to talk to a government lawyer. But I think that they saw me as like Carla, the abogada, and so they were able to trust me and I really got to know them. And I remember them all asking me like, can you help us with our immigration case? And I was like, man, I wish I could. But right now I'm representing the government. I don't do immigration. I'm a federal attorney. But a few years after that is when I decided to go ahead and open my own practice. And in order to do that, as an attorney, like our degree is a general degree. It's not like you specialize in law school. You specialize once you start practicing. And so even though I had lived the immigrant experience, I had never practiced as an immigration lawyer. So I knew that I had to get up to speed. I had to learn it quickly. And so I went and I worked for free for 6 months for the National Immigrant Justice Center, which is a nonprofit in Chicago, and they handle lots of great immigration cases. They have appealed cases to the federal courts. So I basically was like, I want to work with you guys. I know you don't have an opening, but I'll work for free. And I just want to learn. And so in those 6 months, I learned so much from those attorneys. They're all so passionate, amazing attorneys. And I felt comfortable enough after 6 months. I mean, not that I learned it all, but I felt comfortable enough to be able to, okay, I can open my own office, obviously take cases little by little, get up to speed on things. And that's kind of how it started. I mean, that was 10 years ago. I opened my office 10 years ago. And then since then, I've kind of been building my team. In the beginning, like with any small business, like it was just me. I was doing everything. I was my receptionist, my marketing, my everything. And then now I'm very fortunate that I've got a great team working with me. We're continuing to grow and hire more people. And I've got, the new office in Florida. And for me, that was so meaningful because that's where I grew up. That's where I was undocumented, until I was a teenager. And so it just felt really nice to be able to bring those services to my hometown, basically. That's where I went to high school and I know so many people down there. But in the end, my family ended up being able to apply for a green card under immigration reform in 1986 under President Reagan. He signed that bill. And basically it allowed people who had been here prior to a certain date. I think the date was like 1981 and we arrived in 1980. And so if you were able to show that you have been living here, you have documentation, you can't have criminal record, things like that. But we were able to apply. We got our green cards. It was a process because I had like the temporary green card first. And the green card is what you need to usually have before you can become a citizen. And so I got that when I was a teenager, and then I became a citizen in my early 20s. And then that's really kind of how I ended up going through the process myself, and now as an attorney, like I can relate on a very personal level. I always tell clients, like, I didn't start here. I know they see me like, oh, you're successful. I'm like, no, I started out as an undocumented immigrant too in this country, not knowing what options would open up for me. Because I didn't choose to come here, like a lot of my clients did not choose to come here, with the ones that are kids when they came.
So you definitely are like this big American success story. And like, I love to hear it. That's pretty cool that now you got 2 offices now. That's pretty cool. That's pretty good. Kudos to you, man.
Thank you. But I don't ever forget that. Like, I feel sometimes like, even my mom, cleaned houses when we first moved here. And now I have somebody cleaning my house. And that reminds me, like, that was my mom. That's what she did to be able to, for us to be able to pay our bills. And, and so, yeah, no, I never forget. Like, it's constantly in my mind how fortunate I am to have been able to do what I've done and to be where I'm at. But I never forget. Like, to me, it's important to still stay humble and give back. Like, do as much as you can to help others. I have lots of law students that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I always respond to all of them, right? Even if it's like, I won't be able to set up a time for another couple months, but I always respond because that meant for someone to guide me, because I was the first attorney, obviously, in my family here in the US. And I was clueless. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no one to guide me. And so I always, when students reach out, I always make time for that because I think that's important.
Well, let me ask you this. This is kind of like, just because you know how it is, the struggle and stuff like that. Do you ever, like, just personally, just like have a tad bit of survivor's remorse at all?
I don't know. I try to definitely always keep it present. Like, that's when I deal with clients on a daily basis, like clients who have just arrived or clients that are really struggling to like make ends meet, or sometimes might have a hard time, like, I want to do this process, but I can't afford it. Like, I try to be flexible. I try to help with payment plans because that was my family. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Like, as a kid, I mean, I didn't have health insurance. Like, that was like a luxury, like dentists, going to the dentist, that was like a big thing. Like, we would do that every few years. Like, okay, we save up, go to the dentist. But now I have all those things, and absolutely at times I feel like, wow, if I hadn't come at the time that I came, right? Because that was pure luck. The fact that we got here and a few years later, there was amnesty, and we were able to apply for the green card. That was nothing that I did. That was pure luck. And I look at my clients and I think had they come at that time, they would have been able to, but because they came later, and that's not something I had any control over. So in terms of, survivor's remorse, for sure, I feel like it was dumb luck that I got here when I did, and I was able, and because of that, I'm able to be where I am right now. I'm an attorney. Had I not been able to get a green card, I mean, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. Like, honestly, it's very hard when you don't have that stability in this country. And I see my clients work really hard. Some of them are, they want to go to school, but it's difficult depending to what state you're in. Some states make it even more difficult, to be able to do anything if you don't have a green card in the US, if you don't have legal status here.
And you're definitely becoming like a trailblazer because, like I said, to me, it's powerful. Your story's powerful. The humbleness that you have with it, and now you're doing what you can to give back. And it's so nice to hear. So that's why we have Obligada Casas, make sure I get it right. Obligada Casas, immigration attorney, Carla Casas. She is here on Straight Up Show podcast, talking about all about immigration. We're gonna have a little bit more with her on the other side of the break. Make sure you stay tuned to the Straight Up Show podcast.
Our world is made up of roughly 8 billion people of different races, different cultures, and different languages. And sometimes being different is often frowned upon due to a number of things. But here at Straight Up, we believe it's our job as people to sit at the table, learn from each other, in hopes of making our world into a better place to live. So join us as we have these cultural conversations, only on the Straight Up Show podcast.
The videos and images displayed all across the world cannot fully express what the people of Ukraine are going through. This senseless act of terrorism has cost many their lives and forced millions of Ukrainians out of their homes. Yet it's the Ukrainians' pride and resiliency that has inspired the entire world. So we here at Straight Up ask you to stand for freedom, stand for human rights, but most importantly, join us as we stand with Ukraine. All right, guys, welcome back to the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin. Today, we're talking all about immigration. We have a special guest today, immigration attorney coming out of Florida and Chicago, immigration lawyer Carla Casas. Abogada Casas, thank you so much for coming on the Straight Up Show podcast.
Of course.
And I can only imagine, like I said, to me, I feel like right now, you all just need like a big because I just feel like you all as an immigration lawyers have been going through so much this year, just putting the work in, right?
Yeah.
But currently, compared to last year to this year and this new administration, like, what has been some of the biggest challenges you've faced as an immigration lawyer? Because even right now, as of like last week, they talked about changes in the immigration policy or going back to where I think it was like, now we're going to protect our farmers and hotel workers now. So what has changed? Like, it's rapidly changing with these policies. They're all over the place.
Yeah, I would say starting this year, once Trump took over as president, they quickly kind of started out right away. Immigration has been the focus, right? That's part of what he ran on. And so, with the executive orders, there were like 30 something that related to immigration. So I started off the year with having to read all of these orders to get up to speed, to figure out what's coming. It's been a harsh enforcement for sure. Like as I know everyone has seen, right? Or maybe not everyone, but they are definitely detaining people indiscriminately. I think, there's a lot of debate about, oh, well, President Obama was the deporter in chief. He deported so many people. But I can tell you, being on the front lines, one of the big differences is, yeah, in terms of the numbers, he may have, but the way that it was done, I mean, the people that were being deported under that administration, the majority of them they had their chance to be in court. They'd already been ordered deported, or also they were prioritizing individuals with like felonies, individuals who had committed crimes. Whereas now they're literally picking up everybody, including people who are leaving their immigration court proceedings, attending their court, doing what they're supposed to do. And I can say this because I have a client from Senegal who I began representing last week. His wife reached out because he has an asylum case and he was going to court, was leaving his court hearing. And this is not just him. This has happened across the country in courts across the country. But now I can speak myself, that my client, he was detained by ICE as he was leaving his court proceedings. We don't know why. It's been very difficult to get a hold of him. I'm currently working on the first step that we take when somebody is detained. For most people, they're eligible to ask for a bond, right? For the immigration judge to set a bond in their case so they can pay the bond and get released. And then they're still in deportation proceedings. They still have to fight the case, but at least they're not doing it from inside ICE detention. So with him, I've not been able to reach ICE. ICE does not respond to us. They don't call us. So I've reached out. I've sent emails. So I don't have an answer yet as to why he was detained. So I'm working on my part, which is preparing a motion for bond hearing. And of course, once they detain the person, they are moving them very quickly. So most people are from Chicago are being moved. A lot of them are being moved to New Orleans, to a detention center in New Orleans. I believe the reason is because that's a different circuit court. It's a much more conservative circuit court. It's beneficial for them. In the event that we have to file a motion for habeas corpus, which is, what you do when somebody's detained and there's no other way to get them out. That's a right that they have to file that. And that would be in federal court. And the Fifth Circuit is not very friendly to that. So I think that this is very purposeful. There's a reason why everybody's being moved to Texas or Louisiana. But basically, yes, this was a client who has no criminal history. He has an asylum case. To me, I'm like, I mean, he's fleeing from his country and he's doing the things that he's supposed to do. And now he's detained by ICE. So, one of the big differences is there is no hierarchies of like, I know there was a lot of talk about, oh, we're going to get rid of all the bad guys. Okay, in reality, I can tell you that's not who they're detaining everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter that you don't have a criminal history. It doesn't matter you've been here 15, 20 years. If you don't have status, then you're fair game. And they've said this many times, in terms of like the press secretary has said, just the fact that you're here without status, that's a crime. So you're a criminal. So that is consistent with what we're saying. That's not at all what people understood it to be. Now they're kind of flipping the script, So for sure, this year has been started off very stressfully because we knew that was coming, that they were going to start detaining people, a lot more people. And so that's one of the things we're dealing with right now, that, clients are afraid, even the ones that do have a way to apply for a green card, for example, which last year we would have been like, of course, let's do it. Let's get that application filed. Now, they're afraid and they're asking me, am I going to be detained? And I can't say for sure because we've heard of people being also detained at their green card interview, like when they go to the actual interview for the green card. Now, granted, some of those people might be that they already had a removal of deportation order from before. I can't speak because I haven't had that happen to my client, but I can tell you that it's definitely happening, and it's created fear in the community, which I think is unfortunate because now people that maybe are eligible and should be applying are afraid because they're seeing all of these crazy things happening that we as attorneys don't have control over. Right? Like even if I had been at court the day that my client, I was not representing him at that time, but even if I had been there when he left his court hearing, his asylum court, I can't get in the middle of ICE. Like if ICE is going to detain him, ICE is going to detain him. There's nothing I can do in the moment. Afterwards, I can file a motion, which is what I'm doing. But yeah, that part has been something we've never seen before. I've been practicing immigration law for 10 years. I've never seen something like this to where it really feels like they're hunting my clients down, and it's just really difficult to practice under those circumstances.
So I've never been in law. All I've done is just interview people, especially when I was actually in the field of news, dealing with lawyers, dealing with police officers. So what ICE is doing and how they're actually in my terminology, kidnapping people. Is that not at all any type of criminality at all, what they're doing?
I mean, it certainly looks a lot like entrapment because, for example, what they did recently in Chicago, I think this was last week actually. They cited a lot of people to, oh, just come to your appointment. You have an appointment with ICE. Come check in with ICE. And then when the people showed up, they detained all of them. And so and there was a big uproar here in Chicago. You might have seen it I know there was like on TikTok videos and on the news, but as soon as, I mean, there's a large advocacy community here in Chicago for, immigrant, pro-immigrant. And so quickly that became a whole like gathering down there where ICE's office is, because, the attorney started calling around and telling literally people, no, this is what's happening there. Your client shouldn't come down probably because they're going to get detained. And so they're playing really dirty. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. They are being deceptive with people. But in the end, that's going to hurt them because people now are not going to want to comply. The people that they need to be detaining, nobody's going to want to comply because they're afraid. Because they're like, if we go to court and do the things we're supposed to do, we could get detained because that really is happening. It makes zero sense. And with this client that I mentioned, I still don't know because I've not been able to get through to ICE because they don't call anybody back. I've sent emails, I've sent voicemails. I'm trying to get an understanding from their position. Why did you detain my client? I don't understand. He still has a court date next year. The judge had given him his, another court date next year. The case is still continuing. And and he doesn't have a criminal history. There's no, I'm at a loss right now. I'm still trying to figure that out. And I probably won't get answers until we appear in court. And then they have to respond to the judge and let the judge know what happened, But it's just been, that's really the only way to describe it. I guess they're just playing really dirty, just creating a little more distrust than the people already have when it comes to ICE.
And this is where because before the show, I asked her how political we can get, and I'm trying to be very careful. But you have your own office now, so it don't matter. But you have your own firm. So do you think this is a bigger distraction for other things? Because last administration, there was a scare about building the wall, of course, which never happened. And then now, like I said, as of a couple of days ago, we talked about just, we're going to protect the farmers, but now we're going to protect the hotel workers. Do you think this is a bigger distraction, or do you think that if you're being honest with not just your clients, but people who do turn to other immigration lawyers, just being straight up, do you think this is a time for them to actually be scared or to fear the system or trust the system at all?
I think that it's a time to be very cautious, to absolutely make sure you're working with a good immigration attorney that you trust. I think, right now, as I had mentioned earlier with my family, I'm sure we were dealing with somebody who was not a lawyer, but that is very common when we first arrived. And I mentioned they stole our money. In the immigrant community, you have a lot of these people that are call themselves form preparers. They help you fill out the forms, or notaries who basically, in Latin America, a notary it's not like a notary here. They are, a lot of them are lawyers basically, right? Saying that you're a notary represents something very different in Latin America than it does in the US. But when they come here, they use that to their advantage and they say, oh, I'm a notary, I can help you with your case. I have seen so many cases botched because of these non-lawyers, because immigration law is very complex. And especially at a time like now, when things are changing literally on the daily. Every morning, I'm a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and they do a great job of sending us summaries every day, the top things, because I would not be able to, I would be reading all day long, trying to keep up with, So I rely on them a lot to give us updates, but every morning I'm okay, what happened today? What do I need to be careful with? What things do we need to make sure that we are preparing, in a different way because of what just changed? What clients do we need to warn? So, we are certainly still filing cases, absolutely, but I am and I'm already a cautious lawyer. I can say that. And on top of that, under this administration, I am being excessively cautious. And I am also, as I've always been, because this is what I would want for my family, I am very upfront, transparent with my clients. And I always tell them, I'm look, I'm not telling this to scare you, but you have a right to know this, because in order for you to make an informed decision, you have to know what the risks are. So yes, worst case scenario, you could be detained. And there's times when I do tell them that, when that is the case in their situation. Worst case, and then I'll say, and if you are detained, this is what I can do for you. I can still file a motion. I can get you released, whatever the case might be. But I think clients have to absolutely know it is unfair to like sugarcoat things for them, especially at a time like now, when that is a very realistic possibility for a lot of people. Like before they decide yes or no, do they want to do this? They need to know. But we are still filing cases. Absolutely. We are just doing it very cautiously and making sure clients know, right, what the risks are.
I want to say I'm a U.S. citizen and I was born here, but just me going to the protest last night and just, I think I got to speak my voice, and give back some way because I feel useless. I feel helpless of not helping people because I have friends and I know friends who have been on this, the same Zach podcast, who's had their spouse recently deported and arrested by ICE. It was done through vicious intent from somebody else that was really hateful towards that family and decided to make that phone call, and from a lawyer's perspective, I know right now because, right now I'm live right now and people are definitely trolling and right now saying like, they're giving me the snowflakes and thank you, ICE, and just being vicious, which we all see and so cruel. But have you as a lawyer and what you've been doing to try to help people from a lawyer's perspective, an immigration lawyer's perspective, have you received any kind of hate or do you get not trolled, but do you get any like pushback from other lawyers and trying to who are pro immigration that do you get any kind of hate at all or do you get trolled at all?
Definitely on TikTok. I do a lot of videos on TikTok because I think it's such a great way to be able to get information out there, especially right now. When things are changing so quickly and people are at such a disadvantage, especially the people who cannot afford a lawyer. So yes, on TikTok, absolutely. And I'll just block them. I mean, I have nasty comments actually on Instagram as well. Somebody actually said to me, I think it was some commenter said, oh, something about like, we should look into her too. She might be illegal too, like to me. Yeah. So I was like, okay, whatever. I don't have time for this. I mean, it's just really, I almost like, I don't know. It kind of made me laugh because I'm like, these people are so ridiculous. Like, what else are you going to say, But no, it happens for sure. For sure. But you know what? I just tune it out. I don't even like think twice about it. I just screen people out. Thankfully, on social media, you can block them. I'll delete comments if I think it's just really inappropriate and I don't want to see it, if it's really hateful. But yeah, the hate is absolutely out there. There's no doubt about that. You can't eliminate it. And you have to have thick skin when you're doing work like this, especially at times like these, and thankfully I've grown that thick skin at this point.
I'm a big boy, so I'm glad I got thick skin. I'm working in media, so I definitely get the hate. So I think Mom would say, Mom, I'm glad I'm a big boy because I got thick skin, But it's people like Carla Casas who is going to continue to keep making this country go forward because she's doing her part in a very, very impressive way. Make sure you stay tuned. We have a little bit more with immigration attorney Carla Casas on the other side of the break. Make sure you stay tuned to the Straight Up Show podcast.
Votación es un derecho, un privilegio y una responsabilidad. Muchos han hecho el máximo sacrificio solo para que podamos tener la capacidad de votar sobre lo que creemos que es mejor para nosotros y nuestra comunidad. Así que aquí en Straight Up te pedimos que investigues, deja que tu voz sea escuchado y que estés orgulloso de decir I Straight Up votó.
I think straight up means to be able to speak in a way that is straight up, to be honest and to speak your truth.
Raw, uncut, you know what I mean? It's blunt, straight to the point. This is what it is.
It's just a place to be open and honest, and that's what I appreciate most about it. And it provides a place for community members to come together and just be straight up with each other about things that are going on in the world because it affects all of us.
Unfiltered, raw, with all the cursing that Calvin does.
Straight up is just being real, telling it like it is, being you.
being solid, being who you are, no matter what it is, no matter what situation you're faced with. Right, this is who you are. It really speaks to me, saying it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. Straight up.
We are from I.C.E. Tune in to the Straight Up Show podcast.
Welcome back to the Straight Up Show podcast. I am your host, Calvin, joined today with immigration attorney Carla Casas. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Happy to be here.
Yes, ma'am. And then we're talking all things about immigration. Like I said, if you listen to this podcast, we hit immigration heavy on this podcast. And we want to make sure that our friends and family who are not of the Hispanic or who are not of the undocumented community, like, we don't want to see families torn apart. This is our country. Whether you want to believe it or not, this country was built off immigrants, and they're going to have people more immigrants. And like me personally, knowing this country's history, hey, we weren't the first people here. So it's just like we have to give respect where respect is due. Me personally, my choice is that, hey, you can't speak on people who've been here before and their ancestors been here before. So that's my personal take. But we have people who are immigrants that came to the country and it became citizens. And now we have Carla, who has been through the system. She's seen what people have gone through, and now she is giving back her part by being an immigration attorney. So thank you so much for being here once again. But, I know you're exhausted. I know that you have challenges every single day. And like I said, once again, kudos to your team. But when it comes to the outlook now, like I said, this administration is so unpredictable. But if you can give a prediction, because it's only 6 months in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As this recorded, it's only 6 months in. What is your prediction? Do you think is going to happen going forward, or what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's very interesting. You referenced it earlier. The fact that President Trump is now saying, oh, we're going to halt the raids on the farm workers and the restaurants. And I'm just like, hello, we could have told you that from the beginning. Who do you think is going to do this work? I mean, it's just like blows my mind. I'm like, of course, he has to get the pushback from the companies. That's what makes a difference for him, right? I know that these big corporations, they're saying, what are you doing? You're messing with our workforce, and that's going to affect everybody. So I think that has been very, reassuring in a way to remind me that, like, immigrants are the foundation. They do so much of the work that people don't want to do. They are the hardest. I can say for myself, the majority of my clients, that they are such hard workers. And a lot of them they get taxes taken out of their paychecks. They don't have social security numbers, and they're not going to be able to collect on that unless they're able to get a green card one day. But they are just like keeping their head down, working hard. They don't complain. They put up with so much that workers, U.S. citizens, wouldn't for a second, So I think that in itself is starting to hit home, and we're already seeing it. The fact that he said that to me was like, okay, all right, this cannot continue. And with my colleagues, we've been saying this, like, okay, how long can this realistically continue? This hunting all of these individuals down, it's going to immediately impact, the farm working for one, starting with that. They cannot get any Americans to do that type of work. That's a given, So that actually makes me feel very encouraged, because I feel like, and I think even just the protests, right? People making their voice heard and saying, we are not going to just sit down and let you do this and let you destroy the fabric of our country. Like, that's not going to happen. So right now I'm on a little bit of a high, which is great, because I'm going into another tough week where as I was mentioning to you earlier, I've got some clients who are detained by ICE. We're working on trying to get them released. And that was a very hard week last week, because I had 3 clients that were recently detained. And so we're working, trying to get those people out. And it's heavy. It's heavy. And Friday I was like, oh my goodness, I felt so exhausted. But then then these things happened, right? And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's a balance, where I'm like, okay, things look dark, but then there's a ray of hope, right? And that's what I hang on to. And even just like with our clients, we are still getting approvals. We are still getting good decisions. It's not all bad. These are cases that had already been pending. And, they're strong cases. And one in particular I want to mention, because this was a couple, it's transgender women. It's a couple. One of them is from Canada. So she was applying for the green card. And they were terrified because, with regard to this administration and how they might make them feel at the interview. And we did a lot of hand holding, and they finally had their interview last week, and the green card was approved. And she wrote us the sweetest review on Google, and it was so heartfelt. And it just, that to me was like, it's a balance, right? Where we have really bad days, and then we have days like that where I feel so proud of the work we did with them, because she was just very expressive about how we did hold her hand. We talked to them, I don't know how many times. I mean, she was panicked. She kept calling us, and but that's how I lawyer, right? I'm a very hands-on, especially when it comes to immigration law, because I do what I would have wanted those lawyers to do for my parents, which they didn't do, but now I'm doing, right, for other people. So, it's a balance, but I feel hopeful today. I absolutely feel hopeful. It's not all going to hell.
I know. And me, I'm kind of emotional because yesterday seeing people at the protest, like, it just made me happy. It gave me a high too, because it showed, and it was crazy because one, it was elderly people, but one, it was more people of other ethnicities showing up, because the main focus has been Hispanic and Latinos, but like, it was more of white, Black people, elderly, and like, mind y'all, it was 112 last night in Las Vegas.
Wow.
So, and
that's commitment right there.
And it was, but to see the community passing out waters, putting the elderly on the tents, and giving them little cushion pads, and just shows that we all stand together on all of this, and that besides protesting, right? That's one of my final questions to you is, we who are U.S. citizens and we don't believe in what's going on with ICE and things like that, how can we give back? What's your advice to us, to those who are watching this right now or who participated in a protest? Because a protest can only do so much. How can we help? What can we do to give back, to kind of maybe not get so much pressure off you all as immigration lawyers, but what can we do to try to help you all out as much and try to contribute to making sure this stuff is not going to keep happening to people who don't deserve this?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things is, reaching out to your congressmen, your senators, making your voice heard that way. I mean, most of them you can quickly go on their website, you can send messages, you can call their office to make it clear to them, especially in states that are very conservative, and so I think that's one of the ways that you can put pressure as well without having to go to a protest. And just make clear to them, like, you're not in agreement. You don't like what they're doing. What the heck is ICE doing? It doesn't have to be anything formal. Like, you can just express it in your own words. And every congressman's office or senator office is a little bit different. The best thing is to go on the website and figure out but sometimes it's as easy as sending a message through the website, but they keep track of all of that, and they have to respond, and they have to deal, So I think that's one easy way, which doesn't even require you to leave your house. I think another is also, for those who are able to donate to these groups, ACLU, for one, is carrying the load, bringing so many lawsuits right now. And there's several other nonprofit organizations that are doing really good work. And honestly, we kind of depend on them. When the administration is doing so many things and there has to be so many lawsuits filed, they're the ones that are doing that. Because individually, like, a lot of these clients, I mean, there's times when I could file a lawsuit on behalf of my client, but sometimes they don't have the funds for it. Sometimes they're just scared, and they're like, we don't want the government to retaliate against us later because of this, which should not happen. But at the same time, I get their fear. And so I think that's another good way. And even just maybe even volunteering for those that have the time. Maybe they don't have the money, but they have the time. A lot of these organizations will put out announcements like, we're looking for volunteers, maybe for those that are bilingual to help interpreting, when they're dealing with clients and maybe they don't speak their language. And there definitely are so many ways that people can get involved. It doesn't necessarily always require having to go to a protest or a march or even money. Sometimes your time, or even just like I mentioned, the first one I think is a strong one, is sending a message to your senator and congressman, and making clear that you're not in agreement with these things. And that's going to get to them. They're going to have to read it,
I try my best to give back as much as I can. Like, my Spanish isn't that great, so I can't help you.
Okay.
But like I said, I've worked in news, and so like I know different resources, like people like you, Cynthia Santiago, who is definitely in Los Angeles right now. So I'm pretty sure she's definitely going through some things too, and other friends in San Antonio. So just once again, kudos to y'all. But I think one of the issues right now is like what I keep coming up with, and forgive me for not knowing the full details of it now because I kind of forgot about it. But with DACA and asylum seekers, like, because it was under President Obama, and now it's about to go away. From what I'm understanding, like, are they protected too, or are they still, or is this going to happen? What's going on with DACA and those who are trying to seek asylum? Are they just in the same boat too, or what?
Yeah, so let's start with DACA. DACA has been through so many, it's been a roller coaster ride, right? And it is still working its way through the courts. But in practical terms, DACA has not changed in terms of the people that have DACA can continue to renew. And we're obviously encouraging our clients, continue to renew your work permit. Because, DACA, all it gives you, well, it gives you 2 years a work permit. You have to keep renewing, and it does protect you from deportation unless, you commit a crime or under this administration, everything's become a little bit more fluid, I guess, right? But for the most part, though, our clients who have DACA, obviously, we're definitely encouraging them to continue to renew. Now, new people cannot apply because that's what's tied up. There was an order that kind of froze that, and that's continued. So there's no new applicants that can come into the DACA program, but the ones that have it should continue to renew. For a lot of our DACA clients, we have been able to get them to the green card status, not through DACA, but through other avenues. Because unfortunately, DACA is not a path to a green card. It's just kind of a temporary thing. But, it's been over 10 years now that DACA was implemented. So at this point, a lot of those DACA are now, in their close to 40 years old, or maybe some of them I think might be over 40, and they're married and they have kids. And so a lot of times other avenues have opened up for them. And so I always encourage our clients, like, if there is a more permanent avenue, get on that avenue. Let us help you get on that avenue. Because again, DACA is, it's not a guaranteed thing, and it's not over yet, but we don't know what in the end is going to happen with DACA. So with regard to DACA, my message is still continue to renew if you have it. Don't let that permit expire. Take advantage of what you have while you have it. But if you have other, speak to a good immigration attorney and see if there's other avenues, because there might be other avenues for you at this point. The DACA people have been here since they were kids. A lot of them, maybe they have like an employment option. There's different things that could have changed. And so we're constantly kind of looking at our own DACA, our DACA clients to see what's changed in their life. Has a new avenue opened up? Can we do something more for them? So that's my advice to DACA. With regard to asylum, the asylum laws have not changed. What's changed is the way the administration is harshly, applying some of these and detaining people. Like, for example, like my client who is applying for asylum should not have been detained. I don't know why he was detained. So those things, unfortunately, are happening, but you can still apply for asylum. The asylum law has not changed, right? So now I do want to say, first of all, our office doesn't handle any asylum cases. It's been several years that I don't handle asylum. We've kind of decided to focus our efforts on, like I said, family immigration, humanitarian, but not asylum. Because asylum, I will say, you have to be very careful as well. It's not, I think a lot of people assume that if things are rough in my home country, let me apply for asylum. But no, asylum is very difficult to prove. There's very specific requirements under the law that you have to prove, and you have to have evidence, and you have to show that you're being persecuted based on your race, ethnicity, national origin. It's a very specific thing. It's not just, things are rough in my home country and I don't want to go back. And I get that. I understand that. But that doesn't mean you have an asylum case. So that's one of the things that I've seen a lot of people that
unless you're from South Africa, right?
I'm sorry?
Unless you're from South Africa, right?
Apparently, yeah, then you're a shoo-in. Then you're good, right? Under this administration, which I can't even start commenting on that. It's just unbelievable. But bottom line is, yes, asylum has not gone away. People can still apply for asylum. But like I mentioned, you have to make sure that you meet the criteria, because there are a lot of people that apply for it as a last case resort, but they're not able to meet their claims, and meet the requirements.
Man, she's spitting fire, y'all. She is definitely come on this podcast and definitely educated us as much as she can. I like to extend the invitation for you to come back on if you would like.
I would love to. You can probably see, I'm very passionate about immigration law. I am. I love talking about it. And even though I eat, sleep, breathe immigration, but I still, because also I'm an immigrant. So it's so personal. For me, it's always been very personal. It's not just what I do for a living. I've lived the experience myself. So it can't not be personal,
Yeah, and the story between immigration attorney Carla Casas does not have to end on this podcast. Can you tell people how they can follow you on social media? If they are immigrants looking for a case, like how can they contact you and kind of get information and see what you're doing and also get educated? How can people find you on
Sure.
social media?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is you can also go on our website. So our website is www.casas, my last name, casasimigration.com. And on there's a way to contact us, send us a message. We're also on Facebook under Casas Immigration, if you can search for us that way. On TikTok, I am Abogada Carla. So and TikTok is where I do a lot of the videos, like the quick, just one off. I'm in my office and I heard something and I want to share it. So there you can get a lot of information. Also on Instagram, and honestly, I'm blanking on what my name is. I think it's Immigration Attorney Carla on Instagram. But I'm most active, I would say, on TikTok at this point, Abogada Carla. Abogada is lawyer in Spanish. And again, Facebook. And then what else do we have? YouTube. We have a YouTube channel as well. And it's Casas Immigration, the firm name. So those are all the ways you can follow me and find me and see what we're up to. We try to keep updated information and videos as much as we can.
All right, there you have it. And once again, if you didn't catch all of that, we're going to have all her information on the show's description. If you're watching this right now, you'll see all of her information on the ticker below. Hey, Carla, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You did a phenomenal job. I just got to say thank you so much, y'all.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm really happy to have been here and I get excited talking about it. So it was great to meet you.
You too. And before you go, because like I said, Spanish is your first language, can you just give like a lasting, especially for Hispanic and Latino communities, then I guess again in English, but like first, just like a very powerful message of hope or going forward with all this process. Can you give it to us in Spanish, please?
Sure, I'll do Spanish first. Para todos mis amigos latinos ahí que están escuchando, les quiero decir que no pierdan la esperanza. Ustedes están acá trabajando duro, haciendo buen trabajo y las cosas no siempre van a estar así. Estamos viendo algo positivo. Encuéntrese un buen abogado o abogada que les pueda guiar, porque eso sí es muy importante ahorita, tener mucho cuidado, pero no pierdan la esperanza. Estamos acá para ayudarlos y así como yo pude quedarme, yo siento segura que la mayoría de mis clientes también van a poder encontrar forma de quedarse aquí en Estados Unidos. So in summary, basically just kind of letting everyone know, like, things are not going to stay this dark forever. We're already starting to see some rays of hope. And, I always tell my clients, you've been here a long time. You're not going anywhere. Like, there's going to be a way for you to get there. It may not be an easy avenue. It may take a while, but just like I was able to say, I have faith that the majority of my clients, there is going to be an avenue for them. I also mentioned that it's really important right now to find yourself a good immigration attorney. Don't just trust everybody because, things are much more difficult right now. So that's of huge importance. But you got to keep the faith. I mean, good things are going to happen, and I feel very confident about that after this weekend, especially seeing the response that we have, from so many people out there.
And it was beautiful to see. So, hey, y'all, there you have it. Immigration attorney, Abogada Carla Casas. Thank you once again for coming on the Straight Up Show podcast.
Of course. Hope to see you soon.
All right, guys. And y'all, her story does not have to end just here, y'all. You can go to our website at straightuppshowpodcast.com. It's STR8 upshowpodcast.com. There you see this interview with Carla and our past interviews with other immigration attorneys. They all want to make sure that this country is safe, that people who want to come to this country is safe, and that they do it the legal way, and they're here to help you out. So make sure you go watch this episode, listen to Carla and her powerful story today about her becoming a U.S. citizen, going through the process, and now giving back to the community to help those who are going through the same process. Also, if you want to support the podcast, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com at straightupshowpodcast.com, patreon.com/straightupshowpodcast 318. Until then, there's only one rule to our show. You got to be
straight up.
All right, there you have it.